This next session is going to focus on fan engagement. We're going to take into account what it is, why it exists, what works, what doesn't, and sharing some useful learnings. Joining me to do that are four experts on this subject. Steve Heymann in the middle is Business Development Director at Origins Digital. Tim Stott, to my direct left, is Digital Executive Producer at Host Broadcast Services. Fiona Wood is Little Dot Studios' new Strategy Director. And Pete Bellamy, last but not least on the end, is SVP Global Sports Lead for Endeavour Streaming. Welcome to you all. To kick things off, I'm going to ask the panel to quickly give us their take on what they see and define as fan engagement. This will hopefully not only give you an insight into the speaker's thought processes, but also help to establish the foundations of what we're going to talk about afterwards. So Tim, you get the honour of going first. It's time for an elevator pitch. From your point of view, how do you define fan engagement and what purpose does it serve?
A fan is engaged when they have acted, they have done something. I mean, consuming sport can be a very passive experience, watching highlights alone on your tablet. But when you get a fan to do something, you are automatically taking that relationship to the next level. Drop me a like is pretty basic. A comment doesn't do much for us until that becomes part of our ongoing conversation. So Monday mornings, what do you think becomes, hi, Fred said this yesterday, but I don't agree, etc. Suddenly you go from having a digital content relationship in which you are talking at your audience to one where you're talking with the audience. And how do we get them to engage? We ask them.
Thank you very much. Steve, what's your definition? Does it differ?
Not much. I would say that globally, this is all the single occasions that you have to interact with the fans on all parts of a sports organization. This comes with OTT and videos and the way fans are interacting, but it's way broader than that, and for any sports organization, this comes with very different fields. And what does it bring? It's globally loyalty, and which is what all the sports organizations are looking for in the long term, is to have fans that are loyal, that will stick with us, that will be their advocate all along.
Very nice. Fiona, tell us your take on this.
I think for me, fan engagement is about putting the fan at the heart of everything that you do. And it's already been said today that, you know, the one-size-fits-all model is completely obsolete. So now it's really about thinking about your discrete strategies to engage with fans, both across your owned and operated channels.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, again, Pete, what's your fan engagement definition? And again, what purpose can it serve?
So I'd say, I mean, I agree with a lot of what the guys are saying. I'd say it's ever increasing in its scope, fan engagement, right? I think you can look at it from a physical kind of fan engagement perspective, especially in sports, as to how can you deliver the best kind of attendance experience. But increasingly behind that, there's a very close digital engagement as to how you deliver that great kind of in-ground experience. And really the breadth is just going wider and wider and wider, and how do you find content strategies to drive those engagements to, as the guys have said, drive a little bit of interactivity, whether it be through social channels or through, you know, viewing tools and a player experience, through a live experience. And, you know, it's really looking at, and if you look at whether it be clubs or federations, etc., trying to find a way of compiling as much data about your fans or your customers across all those different verticals to drive the best possible experiences.
Thank you. That's the theory. Now we're going to talk about the practice. How does that actually manifest itself? So we're going to look at some successful examples, and each of the guys is going to share something with us. Fiona, we're going to start with you. Little Dot Studios has done some really interesting work with the England and Wales Cricket Board, the ECB, where the ambition was to create as a complementary proposition to the broadcast. Tell us about it, including what you did and why you think it worked.
So, believe it or not, cricket is actually a really popular sport.
As a cricket coach and cricket fan, I can tell you it is.
But the challenge for the ECB was that they weren't necessarily engaging directly with their customers. Sky were doing that very successfully for them. And what was starting to happen is they didn't really know who was coming to the website, who was on their social media, who was really in the database. So what we did was, when the new broadcast cycle came around, we carved out some reserved rights, which we could then use across our social platforms and across the website and app. And what was really key for us in this strategy was to make sure we provided something that was complementary to the broadcast, not competing. We wanted to provide a true second screen experience for the fan. So if you were watching the broadcast and you wanted to replay one of the clips, you wanted to see a wicket, all you had to do was go to the scorecard on the website or on the app and just hit the play button. And every single clip was integrated in there, the highlights are integrated in there, and what you end up with is this really complementary proposition for that core cricket fan.
So let's just take that a little bit deeper. So I'm a cricket fan. I wanted to watch the Test match, England, New Zealand. Am I expected to have my television on here, my iPad on my knee? Am I expected to watch it on my big PC screen with two things side by side? What's the environment this fan engagement takes place in?
Most people watch sport with a phone. So they'll either be following on Twitter to chime in with a conversation, or they'll be looking for the clips. One of the main requests that the ECB would get is, where can I see that? Once it's already happened, you can't control the broadcast, so how can you provide content to fans that really want to see it? And these scorecards, they last forever. If you want to go back to, the World Cup and watch a clip from that again, it is all on the website, it is all on the app.
What was the success? How did you gauge the success, and how do you know it worked?
The stats showed us it worked. The amount of people who downloaded the app, the amount of people who came to the website, who played the clips, which you can obviously monitor, but really importantly, sign-ups to the database, because this is just a gateway. What the ECB did really successfully is start to create content that you couldn't access just by clicking, you had to sign up for. This was free, in inverted commas, and if you wanted deeper content, so sort of behind-the-scenes content or mini documentaries, that's when the ECB would encourage you to sign up, and their membership rates have increased. It's been insane. They've absolutely exploded.
Fantastic. Tim, let's change sport. Let's move on to badminton, another very popular, interesting sport. You've, in that project, production of videos that are not necessarily the official, as you put it in the notes to me, the line of the federation. So this is a project called Badminton Community. So tell us more about it. See some on the screen.
I can talk through this.
Players dancing.
This is Ben Beckman. He's in the UK. He's one of our content creators. As you can see, he's the real deal. We have not planted a professional presenter in this video, and I'm not trying to be mean to him in any way, but he is an absolute hardcore badminton fan. This video I love, and it got really good numbers and loads of engagement because it does a whole lot of things that I like so much. Firstly, he's going through some of the greatest celebrations in badminton, and he has raided the official archive. And for the people in this room, we know you all have a browsable archive, digital archive by now, of course, right? What about giving a login to that to some of your key fans and seeing what they come up with? Because they will, without doubt, see things in there that you won't see as a sporting federation, as a media company, as people who wear less exciting clothes than our content creators here. So that's a key thing. What he's also done, which I love in that video, is he's scraped other people imitating that celebration. So he's gone out and found that, and suddenly he's created a new conversation. So they feed back to him and say, Ben, why did you take our clip? What about this? We've got a whole new conversation going on based upon an original idea, which was, let's do a compilation about the best victory celebrations in badminton. And in my world, compilations are king. You go back and you hammer a very simple theme and find out different clips that suit it. It's very easy to understand in an Instagram world, a short attention span world. The idea is very simple. He sets it up and resolves it in just a minute or so. So that's what we're looking for. One more thing about that, if I may. The federations say to us, look, we're not fun and sexy, right? We're the police. We find our athletes when they misbehave. We're the establishment. What can we do? Bringing content creators inside your content ecosystem is a really, really good way of changing the tone. So this is branded community content. He is not the official spokeshead of the Badminton World Federation. He's got a bit of leeway, but suddenly you're totally changing the message mix and the vibe within their content social media platforms.
How are you gauging the success of that particular piece of content?
Good old-fashioned way, views. When you're getting views compatible with your highlights that are going out on Sunday afternoon, that's a really good sign. It's interesting, when I'm talking to federations, I almost never say the word highlights. Not that we don't like them, they're very important. They'll probably be the most watched thing ever till the end of sport. But they're difficult to evolve and they're difficult as an engagement tool. So all these conversations we're having, like Ben there, is like, forget about the weekend. That's covered with highlights. You've got wall-to-wall coverage. What are we going to get on Monday? What do we get on Tuesday? That experience from between the tournaments is a really big, important area for us. And that's where, people say, must check my BWF Instagram feed because I'm always getting a fresh stream of new ideas.
Is there any monetization involved in this? Is this all free content?
I'm glad you mentioned that, Will. Monetization, we've been doing some branded activations, not with badminton, and once again the message there has been to get the athletes, sponsored athletes, taking us behind the scenes. Once again, this is not a professional ENG camera crew following them. We're actually getting them to film themselves. We don't give them a script. You give people who are not professional presenters a script and you get back a hostage video. Not good. This is them expressing, look, here's what I put in my pack. Here is my day going to the slopes to practice for skiing or whatever. And the value for the brand is that they are getting editorial content on editorial channels of things that you can't get anywhere else. And that's been really valuable for us.
Interesting. I think we'll come back to monetization when we come to some of the challenges later, but thank you for that. Steve, you've had some success providing interactive experiences for watching football in Belgium. Tell us about that.
Yes, one of our clients is Proximus, a very big telco in Belgium. And they came to us asking to leverage what was possible about an OTT platform, avoid having a lean-back experience. And we came with what we wanted as a gamified experience. And when I say gamify, it's not just putting a game in the app, it's really providing an experience for the fans watching the football games that feels like a game. And this is what we do with our time wheel, where users can play with this wheel and go back to watch an action again and create their own experience. And at the same time, we bring services because we bring data, we bring everything that a fan want to see while watching a game. And what we can do on top of that, and this brings the whole gamification experience global, is that we can bring chat, but we can also bring quizzes, polls, small games, all that to interact, have the fan engaged, and ultimately this is what we brought to our client, because they got a much better engagement, which means better retention and better transformation.
You said much better engagement, if I don't mind me sounding slightly rude, but what does that actually mean to them? What's that in terms of pure results?
I can't give you specific numbers, but the KPIs that we had, that the client asked us to achieve, were in terms of time spent in average on a game, which was way higher when we had this experience, but also overall, and this is, I think, very important, is how much each fan interacted, clicked on button, get back, ask questions, all those things all together are ways for our client to know that users are engaged, and for the client it's, again, better retention.
And you're able to tell which of those different facets is more successful than others, and so you can then concentrate on the ones that work and then
and
dismiss the ones that don't.
By the way, we're working on a new project right now, and we are building an experience where we are going to A/B test each new feature to test and learn and see how the fans react with a new feature. We have each new idea, each new game. We will put it in front of different sets of fans and test and learn. And I think this will help us go much faster and better in learning what the fans want.
Thank you. Just before we move on, are you monetizing it, or are they monetizing this?
It's easy. It's a telco, and it's only accessible to their subscribers.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Pete, your example features Sky Perfect TV, which is a Japanese TV broadcaster, but they've launched an OTT platform for streaming the Bundesliga, Leagues 1 and 2. Tell us about it again and what made it successful.
So I think you heard from, Dominic from DFL earlier on the great work they've been doing, and Tobias from TerraVolt. They've both been a crucial partner in this. But the overall concept was, with the Bundesliga, you've had great success with Japanese players of late over the last kind of 5 years or so. And with having a media rights conversation for the Japanese market, it became very clear that both, Bundesliga and the incumbent Sky Perfect TV wanted to do a little bit more than just a standard rights agreement. So we worked closely with them to really look at how we could add value. And I think, as everyone in this room probably knows, the biggest challenge that most broadcasters have, even with their TV Everywhere experience, is that they have a huge amount of live linear content, a massive amount of multi-genre content that they're trying to surface within a TV on the go experience. So we really looked to deliver a dedicated 24/7 always on co-branded Sky Perfect Bundesliga service, which basically meant that Sky Perfect as a broadcaster could still put those live linear games out through all their traditional channels, but for the superfan, and I know we're going to come back to that, but for the Japanese superfan who've decided to invest in the Bundesliga, it's a massive enhancement in the viewing experience. So yes, they can have the lean back experience either at home or within the TV Everywhere application, but that then obviously disappears from the promotional kind of rails that you generally have. They were able to promote to this destination and saw a really high improvement in viewership, dwell time, etc., because not only did you have the live games with great stats integration, etc., but a really nice way of accessing VOD content, highlights content, etc. And look, the final thing I'd say that we worked very hard with our partners on was to make sure it was fully localized. And what we mean by that is localized to Japanese language commentary, which obviously in partnership with the broadcaster, but then also looking at very specific content strategies around how to promote specific games featuring Japanese players, and then great kind of Japanese character stats overlays, etc., to just drive that OTT kind of personalized experience.
Thank you. You mentioned at the very beginning there the rights. So did the rights deal come first and the idea came after, or did the idea come first and the rights deal had to come as part of that?
I think probably in parallel to some extent. And look, to be clear, we're the partner in delivering the service rather than being involved in the actual negotiation. But I think it very much, and look, this is what we're all experiencing, this requirement to have a hybrid strategy of media rights, direct to consumer. We're well beyond this point of an either-or conversation. around, we either do a media rights deal in territory A or we go direct to consumer. There's real value for both parties there, and I think it was a pretty important part for demonstrating why a longer-term partnership made sense for the Japanese market.
Thank you, and as with the other guys, was there a monetization element to this, or is there a way of monetizing?
Yeah, and Sky Perfect and broadcasters generally sit in two camps with this. They decided that they wanted to give, free access or authenticated access to their at-home subscribers, but they then also actually wanted to monetize it to the rest of the Japanese market. Some broadcasters like the idea of that, some hate it, but they decided to go with the combined approach.
Excellent. There is money to be made, thank goodness. We've talked about things that have worked. Now it's time to possibly air your dirty laundry in public. Not really. So what doesn't work, Tim? There must be some things that you've tried. It doesn't have to be, you have to name names. But what sort of things do we know that maybe haven't quite got the traction yet or the world's not quite ready for?
Well, my boss is in the room, so he's very aware of all my failures, since you're asking me about what doesn't work. A lot of ideas fail because we overcomplicate them. And the great thing about delivering in, say, a social media market is if the idea gets complicated, bust it down and then do the next bit as another idea. So many things, but we could also say this, and what about this, and what about this? Especially when you're working with engaged fans, super fans who are not professional media people. As soon as you drown them with instructions and try and make their idea too complex, you leave, as soon as the fans looks at it and says, I don't understand what's going on, you've lost them. That's absolutely guaranteed. So simple ideas work, complicated ideas don't work. Another thing that doesn't work is expecting London creative agency content from people who are filming in their bedroom on an iPhone. That's an unreal expectation and is a recipe for big problems.
That sounds like an over-a-beer conversation, which we'll have later. Fiona, again, what maybe have you tried that hasn't perhaps got the traction you thought it might?
I'm going to use another cricket example from the ECB. There was this massive ambition to try and collect as much personal data as possible. So we mapped out all the content that we believed would encourage people to sign up. And I'm going to take the full responsibility for this because this was my idea. Squad announcements are one of the biggest read articles in cricket. So I suggested we put that behind a registration wall, and that would encourage, more data collection. What we didn't really consider was when the embargo lifted for journalists and the timing of that. We actually went out at the same time. So all of the journalists were talking about it really openly, and we had actually closed off the information, and it was the ECB's news. And Twitter let us know that they were not happy.
Is it fair to say you've learned from that experience?
Yes.
Excellent. Steve, come on. What things perhaps didn't work or haven't worked quite as well as they might have done?
I think one example I can give is one former client of us. We did build an OTT platform for them, which worked very well. But there were just not any content. And you can build all the tools you want, all the gamifications you want, if it's not on a good ground of good content, live, not necessarily live content, but when fans go back to the platform or social media, but anywhere they go, you can build anything if you don't have the content at core, and you need to invest into editorial teams to have the right content, and then everything goes.
Thank you. Content is still king. Pete, what maybe hasn't worked for you, or for maybe an example of somebody else you know?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely back up the content piece. I think we're seeing there's a very different content strategy needed if you're launching a club-focused OTT service, right? As opposed to a NBA Game Pass, where you're marketing to a Chinese audience who are signing up for a season-long experience, with an endless amount of live games. So if you look at the football club side of things, and we're launching services this summer actually, you have to take a complete step back and think about what feature sets you want, but crucially, it's all about that content strategy and coming up with original ideas, behind the scenes, access all areas. That's what's ultimately going to drive the experience, and it's very much a big step away from the match day experience. It's actually even more so about the non-match day experience, and people being able to sit there on a Tuesday lunchtime and dip into a stream, and the manager's just coming off the training field to do a quick 5-minute interview. That's absolutely crucial, so I completely agree with that. But I think on the challenges side of things, I would say the one for me that personally I've looked at, and I think there haven't been that many good examples of executions of, are the kind of virtual watch room type implementations. Yes. And I think, many people have tried, especially through COVID, to execute against those, but I think they're very complex. I think there are barriers to a lot of the services we run where watch rooms are relevant. They're premium services, so you've got to have a fan base or a friendship base where everyone's already subscribed to these services, and then you've got the operational latency issues, etc. So I think that's one area that hasn't worked so well. Yeah.
Just out of interest, has anybody in this room taken part in a watch party during a sporting event, football match, anything like that? Hands up if you have. One. It's just, it was all during Zoom time, wasn't it? We didn't want any more Zoom time. We wanted to watch football. Anyway, that's an aside. It's a good point. I'm now going to test your knowledge of your customers and your clients and the guys ultimately paying the checks. Tim, we'll come to you first again. What are the big challenges that your customers are facing as you see it?
Obviously, that they need to strike a balance between the importance of having people engage with their platforms, and that monetization is always a challenge on digital when you're effectively giving away lots for free. They need to, like I said before, balance the fact that if they don't report something, if they're not telling a story, other people will fill the space. And it's a really vexed issue in that, like we said, I'm an institution, I'm a sporting federation, but if I don't talk about this, other people will do it anyway. How are we going to resolve that? That's a huge one.
A bit like Fiona's example with the announcements of the squad, presumably. The papers are doing it, so if you're not doing it, somebody else will. Is that the same sort of...
I really like that example because it's like there's an eternal struggle between marketing people and content people in the world, right? And sometimes the content people get ahead of themselves, and suddenly you find out that there's no real strategy in terms of, like you said, capturing data. And sometimes it feels like it goes the other way, where you think, well, we can put 20 things in this Instagram feed a week, but if we put in 4 things asking for money, we're going to annoy, you know what I mean? So it's a real balance, and when you work in these places, it's so important to share these ideas and express the value in an open and kind of relaxed environment, so that you know that you can put yourself in the position of the fan and say, that's a nice experience. I'm not going to unsubscribe to that because I'm being bombed or whatever.
It's an issue that SVG has, I can tell you. So, Fiona, it doesn't have to be the ECB, obviously, but what do you think that federations, leagues, clubs, etc., what are the challenges that they're facing as you see it?
I've worked in 3 different rights holders, and it's probably more of an internal challenge, actually. A lot of companies and rights holders like to be output first. They want a video. They want an Instagram channel. They don't necessarily understand why they want it, and they just know they should have it. TikTok's a huge one. We should be on TikTok. Everyone's on TikTok.
But why?
What fails to happen a lot of the time is that thinking as to, okay, why? And then once we're there, how are we showing up? How are we keeping it authentic to us? How are we going to have the right to have a voice in this? Because audiences are really switched on now, and if you're inauthentic, they pick up on it really, really quickly and will tear you apart. So that's sort of, I think, one of the biggest challenges that a lot of companies face is trying to change the narrative away from what they're doing, but to why they're doing it.
Very interesting, and the authenticity thing is really key, I'm sure. Steve, again, customers, whether they're federations, leagues, clubs, federation leagues, clubs, what do you see as their challenges?
We currently have these exact discussions with a few federations about what content should they make available for all. How should they reward their fans, either because they are part of their membership program or they are stadium subscribers, they have a seat. So they are all asking themselves, how do I spread my content, my brand enough to be seen by everyone? Should I make it free or part of it? This is a balance that is also linked to the monetization model. And I know it's a big struggle for lots of rights holders right now.
Thank you very much. Pete, same question to you. What are the challenges that as you see that your customers and your clients are facing?
So I'd echo the point from Fiona on the authenticity piece. I think that's absolutely crucial. And I think the challenge there is that everyone wants to get more and more access, all areas type content. And for that to be authentic, you've got to sometimes show warts and all, which is in conflict with a lot of sports stars, especially footballers with egos, etc. So there's a challenge to navigate there. But I would say, with all sports federations and from a consumer point of view, and also sports federations from a consumer's point of view, the challenge is just content's everywhere. And, you've had this complete aggregation all the way down to it being everywhere now. How do you kind of reaggregate that into a meaningful proposition for consumers, I think is really important. And then I think for sports, federations, leagues, clubs, they're all trying to work together, but I think they do step on each other's toes a little bit about, what point do they hand off with the consumer relationship. But ultimately, they're all navigating, as I say, this hybrid strategy that's needed. And we see with our business, we've talked about cricket. Cricket's very hot at the minute because everyone's seen the IPL rights agreements this week, which has been fantastically successful. We run the ICC TV service, and we're there to basically help them provide optionality and flexibility quite quickly so that they can go into markets quite quickly, they can retract from markets, and that's really the same across the board. So, for example, this weekend, we're going to be running the Bangladesh-West Indies games in Bangladesh, which we haven't generally done, which should drive a big uptick in usage. But it's that ability to be able to go into markets and come back out, and I think that's where sports federations have a big job on their hands to make sense of as I say, that hybrid strategy.
Really interesting. And it circles back to a point earlier about aggregation, which I think the first panel discussed about when you've got competing leagues or federations or clubs, how do you then aggregate that content so we can, as consumers, consume it? I've got a quick fire round to finish with, but before I do that, has anybody in the audience got any questions? My colleague here, Heather, you won't miss her, she's the bright red one at the front, has a microphone. Anybody got a question for the panel on the subject of fan engagement, monetization, or in Tim's case, not giving, influencers video cameras? There's maybe a story there you could share if you want to probe him for an anecdote. Anybody got a question? No? Hands up if you do. No problem. Oh, there's one. There's one. The gentleman here in the lovely green suit.
You didn't speak about the IP distribution within the stadium, because there is a fan engagement topic over there. Can you say something about it?
Yeah, does anybody on the panel have any sort of engagement tools or products which work inside Stadia? Pete's nodding.
Yeah,
So.
I think it's a great question. We're launching quite a few club kind of OTT experiences at the minute for some Premier League clubs and also some US team franchises. And you're absolutely spot on. As these stadiums become more advanced, the reward policy, how well you can execute against that, so that you can understand your fan consumes a fair bit of OTT video content via the club channel. They generally don't go to games, but they buy a fair bit of merchandise, etc. Actually having the ability to centralize that data insight across your fan base is front and center for all of the football clubs. And you go across to, we're talking about IPL teams. You have to find a way of rewarding these fans so that they get that feel-good factor of knowing that actually if they do buy something from the club shop, they maybe get a discount to then go and see a game at the stadium. If they're in the stadium and they go and buy a burger and a couple of pints, etc., there's then a reward that goes back into them to maybe getting a 1 month free to the brand new club OTT service they've launched. So utilising that technology is absolutely crucial.
Thank you. Anybody else on the panel have anything to add to this in-stadia engagement?
Maybe a
Steve?
quick word. We do have a service in the Orange Velodrome.
Are you pitching your wares?
I'm not.
Carry on.
So in France, there is some gray area where you can offer live games for the spectators that you are sure are in the stadium. I think one of the big struggle here is to ensure connectivity. And it's been a struggle for lots of other stadiums in Europe, where again, you can offer a great experience and ability to go back and watch again an action and choose your angle of view to view it from different angle of views. But if when you have more than 10,000 people in the stadium, nobody access it, that's not a good experience and no one is engaged. So the first step to offering this engagement within the stadium is to make sure your connectivity is perfectly smooth and running, and you have the ability to offer the service when all the fans are in the stadium.
We could do a whole conference on the need for better connectivity. I can't get half-time scores at a National League game, so I don't know how you're going to do replays at a Premier League game. Anybody else got any questions before we wrap up with our quick-fire finale? Mario, would like to ask a question. Heather, have you got the mic, please?
Thanks a lot for the discussion. I'd like to hear your views on where are you putting the athlete in the fan engagement journey?
When?
Where?
In their day-to-day life? Is this you talking about from the athlete's point of view? We want everything that happens before they get to the start gate of the ski run, or before they get on the team bus, or while they're recovering from the injury. We want those touch points with them which keep people going through summer when the sport's not active. We want to see them on their yacht. Everyone wants to see sports stars on yachts. We agree? Yeah. On their jet skis, playing with their dog. I'm being absolutely serious about it. We had a recent case where I was asked to assess someone's Instagram channel, and it looked very corporate. And I suspected that someone with a corporate bent was saying, you should be posting this. And was I to get 40 minutes with this person in a room with a door that closes, I'd say, no, you shouldn't be doing that. What you should be doing is saying, what do you like? The first thing we say when we do these workshops is, they say, what do you want me to do? We say, give us videos based upon what you feel and videos based upon what you think, and we'll speak the truth. You will not get in any trouble. And that could be any time of day. It could be when they've just scored the winning goal. Like I said, it could be when the jet ski stalls in the middle of the ocean.
Thank you. Anybody else very, very briefly want to add to that?
I'd just quickly say, because within the Endeavour Group, we have a big talent management business, and I think that complexity of sports, federations, leagues, clubs, I didn't mention the players, you're absolutely right, and as these clubs and leagues try and continue to drive better and better fan engagement, there's real complexity there as well, in that all of these players have their own representation contracts, their own sponsorship deals. They want to put their own stuff out through their own channels, and then you have the unofficial influencer kind of channels as well. Trying to make sense of that is going to be very challenging as well. I think you're absolutely right.
Thank you. The screen is flashing. In a couple of words, I want you to tell me what the key is to successful fan engagement. Starting with Tim, go.
Brevity and honesty.
Steve.
Hyper-personalization.
Beautiful. Fiona.
Authenticity.
Well done. Pete, sorry.
Don't mess around too much with the core experience, because if you get that wrong, you're in trouble.
Beautiful. Brilliant stuff. Thanks, guys. Really enjoyed that. Please join me in thanking the panel for their time.